There's a lot to slackline, and it's really hard to capture the feelings you get from any particular instance. But the experiences, the people, and the sense of accomplishment are unlike anything else. Each week, join me for a slackline story, told by slackers from all over, in an exploration of some of the more salient things that make this pastime so unique. This first series is about rigging, since it's arguably one of the first things you learn how to do when slacklining. Whether it's a 2-inch ratchet or a padded frost knot in your backup webbing, rigging necessarily takes place before the actual slacklining, and sometimes takes longer than the slacklining itself. So it's the first part of 3 that I consider foundational to the slackline experience. Ready for some Rigamarole? Storytellers were not informed of the topic ahead of time. All they knew entering was they would be recording an interview. Yeah, and then others. Definitely. Just turn this light on. This is like an exercise. We've had many realizations that this is an exercise in patience. It's like you just have to wait your turn.
Do you have an answer? Or would you answer? No answer.
I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it though either.
I feel like when I think about this, it's not like a specific thing that comes to mind or like a specific event, which is maybe not what you want. Like when I think about it, it is like very broad, and like kind of like how it makes me feel. It's like what rigging as a metaphor is to me. Like learning about mentorship broadly. One of the Tahoe rigs, it was me and I think it was like and I was trying to put a piece of webbing in a web block and was having a really hard time. It was on a long line and I was like pulling really hard and I had 3 guys behind me like pulling the line so that I had enough slack to do this. And one of these guys was like, you know, just like, fuck it, like let me do it, just let me do it. And then one of the other guys stepped in and said, no, hold on, she's got it, like she can do it, just like give her a minute. And that like one comment and the extra 20 seconds that I had to do this like very easy task like sticks in my mind as what like rigging in this community is.
So first things, what's your first name?
Chelsea.
And how long have you been slacklining?
2.5 years.
Okay. And what would you say your favorite type of just like go-to slackline is?
Ooh. I feel like I don't have one. No, I'll probably say highlining. Yeah.
Okay. So like 1-inch slackline.
Although I feel like I'm like the worst slackliner ever. I haven't been like out in like months because I've just been like so buried in the farm. But yeah, probably highlining. It was on our trip to Tahoe. It was supposed to be a trip to Yosemite that got last minute switched to Tahoe. What was that line called that we did?
I don't remember.
It was like something point or like something diamond or like something.
Emerald.
No.
Rubicon Point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so this was Rubicon Point, Lake Tahoe.
Yep. It was August.
Yep.
August 2018. I feel like we planned just like as we went there. I don't know. We planned like the week before. It was a super easy approach. It was like along a tourist walking path, the easiest approach in the whole world. But then when we got to the actual line, the anchors were sort of up these like points of rock that required some like mid-level sketch. Like, you might call it like a bit of soloing. But we all managed it, so the anchors were doable. They were bolted. I forget how long the line was. Like, I forget, like 150 maybe? It was short. I'm gonna bump it down to 120. Yeah. It was McFly, wasn't it? Oh man, I'm the worst at this. It was something stretchy, as per the Pittsburgh brand. I want to say it was McFly, but I honestly think that's just because I like the line and I'm obsessed with McFly. So that might just be me. Both of the anchors were like fairly flat. I guess the anchor that was closest to the parking lot was the sketchier anchor. That like definitely scared me to get to. I guess there were a couple different points at this specific rig where I felt like something changed in me. Oh, okay. Now I have my story. Okay, so there were three parts to this. The first was the approach. I guess approaching like the parking side anchor. I watched a bunch of guys do it. The only girls on the trip were Rachel and I. And I watched a bunch of guys who I knew were strong climbers just scramble up to the anchor without a second thought. I feel like I'm just scared of everything naturally, so like when I saw it and when I saw people get to that anchor, I decided that I couldn't do it and that it was too scary and like I just couldn't. But then like I guess I just thought about it more and was encouraged to go to that anchor by several members of the crew to like help out and like at that point I was like, you know what, like I should just like fucking try it. Like none of these guys have done this before. They've never scrambled up to this particular anchor. There's no reason that I can't also try it. I climb, I'm a confident climber, so like fuck yeah, I should just do it. And I did it like I had done it before. It felt so easy. And then the rest of our time at that line was like I just felt so much more confident knowing that I could be anywhere that I wanted to be at any point in time. Like watching other people do things confidently doesn't mean that like I can't do them. That wording is kind of scrambly, but bye. At the time, it was the most beautiful slackline that I had ever seen or ever been a part of. It like absolutely took my breath away. It was right above the most picturesque turquoise shiny water. You could kind of scramble down to the water going underneath the line. So below you could see this beautiful sort of rocky cliffside, and you could watch the waves crashing up onto the rocks. We had friends down swimming in the water. You could see that. The sky was blue and it matched the water, and it was just absolutely breathtaking. It was hot as fuck. I remember that. It was so sunny. I got totally sunburned. At the time, when I looked at it, I was like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. That is my impression of the line. It's funny how we remember these things. I don't remember any of the unpacking. I remember when we got the line up, like looking at it for the first time. I remember that. So I was I guess the image that I'm picturing is from like the hill that sort of sat above both anchors and the line, and I'm imagining looking down at you on the line, like standing in the middle of this like just like giant pool of blue sky and water. So that's what I'm picturing when I picture the line. I did most of the rigging on, I guess it was like climber's right side, the anchor that was closer to the parking lot. Yeah, that was the tensioning side, and I remember it was the more straightforward side. The static side had like a funky piece of rock that they wrapped like slings and all sorts of pro around, and I didn't help with that one, so I was on the tensioning side. And I remember that to tension you had to clip to a PAS and then sort of walk your way down the rock face, so your back was facing the opposite anchor, and you were sort of hanging like over and stepping out to pull tension, and then like reeling yourself back in and like reeling the line in, and so it was a little bit awkward, but I remember doing that by myself, and I guess there were like two parts to it, like one, having the strength to like pull tension myself, and then also having the ability to like move in an efficient way, while tensioning, while like sort of hanging off of this piece of rock. That's really all I'm remembering from that. Yeah, I mean, it's weird trying to recall like such specific things about this trip, because I have like a few images in my head, and one was like of you on this line kind of looking at it from the center. I'm also remembering tensioning and looking down, and then like the strongest memory that I have is putting webbing in a web lock, and to do so I needed the help of 3 other people, to kind of like pull it over, and these are all like 3 really strong riggers. They're all guys who I respect. They're all men, and they were pulling this line for me so that I could put the webbing in the web lock. And I was having a hard time because it was like really tensioned. This actually might have been for that like huge line on the other side. But we were all kind of frustrated. It was like we had been rigging this particular line for quite some time, and one of the guys in the back, in kind of like an exasperated like sort of way, said to the other guy, well, just like let me do it, I can just like do it for her. And guy number 2, instead of saying like, yeah, sure, okay, you can do it, he said, no, just like give her a minute, like she can do it. And like the extra 20 seconds that allowed me gave me like the confidence that this was something that I could do. I feel like with a lot of things in life, it's easy to like step in when you are the more advanced person in anything and say, well, I'll just do it, it'll just be faster, but you don't realize the type of impactful learning opportunity that a beginner can have just by doing something like putting a piece of webbing in a web lock or taking it out, or something like that. To me, told me that like I have people who are like looking out for me, who are backing me up, and who want me to succeed at this. Guy number 1 and guy number 2 are amazing. I love them both.
On a completely unrelated note, was there anything on this trip that you feel like you had forgotten?
I don't think this is the question that you're asking, but I am like revisiting a memory that I have kind of since forgotten. I think it was like the second or the third day. The whole crew decided that Rachel and I should rig the Rubicon Point line, and I was like, sure, and Rachel was like, sure, and everybody was like really excited for us to do this thing, and I wanted to do like an all female rig. That was something that like made me feel super pumped and like, yeah, we can like totally do it. And we like kind of couldn't. Like we I think we both ended up feeling frustrated and sort of on the spot and felt like we had questions that we maybe expected ourselves to know the answers to, and when I look back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, like Rachel and I like rigged the thing. But when I actually think about it, it was hard and kind of unnecessarily hard. It wasn't hard because the rig was hard or like the weather was complicated. It was hard because we didn't really know what we were doing. And no one got on this line before it was checked 5 times over by 5 different people. But it was super frustrating, I think, for both of us. And when I think about that, I feel, I guess I like realize, like where I've come. I feel like that trip was the first trip where I felt like I could contribute as a part of a rigging team, and I was just like pretty broadly insecure, and it wasn't that I didn't know how to do things, it was just that I hadn't practiced them. And now I think about that and feel so pumped for how far I've come. Like I'm definitely still a beginner, but I know that any day of the week that I can go to Seldom Seen with a beginner who doesn't know anything about rigging and rig a line and explain why it's safe. And I can do it in like less than an hour.
Yeah.
So that isn't like a physical thing that I left in the car. But yeah, shit. That sucked. It was cool, but it sucked, and I'm so glad that now I feel like I could go back to that same line and confidently lead the rig.
Yeah.
You know, it's different. This is not related to this rig specifically, but kind of broadly related to, I guess, yeah, when I think about rigging, I a lot of times think about like gender disparity. I think in climbing, it's usually men who lead. In slackline, it's usually men who rig. And I've certainly met the finest, most patient, sensitive men who I know in those two sports, but it is different to, I guess, be a woman who can actively participate in those things, versus one who is just kind of included on the periphery. And I think through learning how to rig highlines, I've had so many positive interactions with men who are actively trying to like use their expertise to elevate mine. In the example of the web lock, it's
so easy for the experienced climber or the experienced rigger to just say, no, I'll do it. And it's a whole other thing to have someone look at a total beginner and say, that's okay, I'll meet you where you are. I want you to be where I am, and let me teach you. And I guess the Weblock thing pops up in my head, and I also think about Breathe, the slackline festival. This past summer, I was able to join the rigging crew, and I honestly just got to learn for like the duration of the festival and the lead up to the festival. And I contributed in that I was a person who was like active and excited and willing to help, but I certainly wasn't a leader in the rigging crew. But by the end of it, I had learned things that I felt like I could pass on to other people and other women. And on the last day of the festival, Davis, one of the rigging crew leaders and a good friend, and I were sort of having a discussion about like the week and how magical it was. And I gave him a hug and said, thank you for taking me seriously. And thank you for listening to my thoughts and teaching me what you could. And we both just burst into tears. And he said, that's just like so important to me. And knowing that is important to him, knowing that educating others and that taking time to mentor beginners, that was like a huge realization, and a really emotional one. So I think when you asked me to recall a specific like rig or line or event or mistake, my mind just went broadly to like what this is as a metaphor to me, and like what this represents as sort of like a metaphor for gender and power, and the way that we could treat each other and the way that we could help each other. That's been my experience with rigging. It is like so much deeper than just like putting up a slack line in the air. I think this is just how I feel about gender equality overall, but specifically, I think in this Pittsburgh kind of East Coast community, we have men who are sensitive and interested in listening, and we have women who speak up when they feel that they need something, when they feel like they need to learn, or instruction needs to slow down, or like they need to lead the rig today because they've just had it with these dudes over here. So it's sort of like a meeting in the middle. And I don't think this is any reflection on any individual person, but like broadly, men are raised to be dominant and powerful, and they're encouraged to be leaders. And I think these things are changing, but certainly women are still being raised to act a certain way, to be quiet at certain times. So I think our community embodies what I consider like the recipe for change. There are like individuals on both sides willing to step up and also step down. You like can't have one work without the other. Yeah. And it's the fact that we all just care about each other and listen and ask questions. I've like never been a part of a better communicating family. Yeah.
All right. Well, that is definitely going to be more than enough. Thanks again for your insight, Chelsea. Follow Chelsea's adventures on Instagram at Chels Huddles. Visit our YouTube page for the spelling on that, as well as bonus video and photos.